It's the Standing 8 podcast, and welcome to our 44th episode. We have a lot to talk about, especially after the Andy Ruiz versus Anthony Joshua rematch that happened on last weekend. Lots to criticize, lots to talk about regarding that. We're also going to have Will Montero again from Sidestep Boxing. He was on last week as well. Great to have him in the next 5 minutes. And for those who are listening to us on Facebook Live, don't forget to subscribe to us either on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher. You can follow us on our Instagram at the Standing 8 Podcast. Also on Facebook, we have the Pound for Pound group. But let's get into the nitty and gritty, which is the AJ versus Anthony Joshua fight. And I got my co-host, Tommy Rush. I got Courtney Tanner, and Courtney and I are going to gang up a little bit on Tommy, and we just want to say, we told you so, Tommy. We told you so. You knew the belts were going to go back. Well, you didn't know. But Courtney and I obviously had a strong inkling about those belts going back. Any surprise? Well, I'm not going to ask you, Courtney, because you were dead on a lot of things, which I'm going to give you a lot of credit during the show as we go further on, because you were dead on point with Andy Ruiz's basically his physicality going into this and his mindset. But Tommy, you were one of the very not few, but you were one of the many that predicted. I got to make sure you eat some crow. You were one of the many that predicted that Andy Ruiz was going to win and win in big fashion. Were you surprised that he didn't win, and were you surprised that he actually was outboxed pretty much for almost 12 rounds of that fight? What was your reaction when you saw that fight, reaction to the scorecards? Tell us, Tommy, tell us.
So let me first start off by saying I was wrong. So I got to admit that, yes, I did think that Ruiz was going to win that fight. That was before I saw the Pillsbury Doughboy show up. So, you know what I'm saying? Once I saw that, the weigh-in and all of that, man, this dude was 16 pounds heavier than the last fight. For what? Like, that dude, he had SpongeBob SquarePants. Like, it was ridiculous the way that he looked in that ring. He even said it himself. He didn't prepare, the way that he should. He didn't train the way that he should. He was pleading at the end of the fight that he would be in the best shape of his life if he got another fight. So now he's on this Keith Sweat shit, begging for one more chance. Like, this is, I didn't have a doubt once I saw that Joshua was going to win. And I knew I was wrong at that point. Joshua, he's getting a lot of heat for how he executed his game plan, and I actually give him credit for it, man. I mean, he went out there and he did what he needed to do. One thing that he did by moving around that whole entire fight was show some people, which many fighters do. Spence just did it, where he fought Garcia the way that he did, to show that he could box more than people talked about. Joshua got in that ring and he showed some conditioning. He showed that for, people that give him some hate, even like myself, about his conditioning and him not having stamina. He came in good shape. He executed his game plan. He boxed, flawlessly. And I give him credit for the win at this point, man. I mean, he did what he needed to do, and I was dead wrong.
Absolutely. And I was talking to you off the record before we went on the air. And kind of stupid of us not to realize, because there was a lot of pictures surfacing, making as if Ruiz was in really, really good shape going into the fight. And like I mentioned to you, like, Jesus, we were stupid because, there was rumors or there was a report saying that he was 16 pounds heavier. And some of us were like, well, 16 pounds of muscle. And I myself believed it. I'm like thinking to myself today, I'm like, a couple of days ago, I'm like, we're stupid for believing that because no boxer is really weight training like that to the point where they're going to gain 16, pounds of muscle. They might gain some pounds
and that quick.
So we should have just figured out that, all right, something's going on. This guy fell off the wagon. This is not 16 pounds of muscle, because that would be absolutely, almost physically impossible to do that, considering his physique, the way he's built.
We got catfish.
We should have known better. Yeah, we got catfish. We definitely got catfish.
We got catfish. He was on his his Instagram model shit.
Yeah, that's right. So I want to bring in Will Montero. He's in. For those who don't follow Will Montero, go on his IG, Sidestep Boxing. Follow him on YouTube as well, youtube.com/sidestepboxing. He's got, close to 2,000 subscribers. He does a fantastic job with his YouTube channel. So, Will, I already gave it to Tommy. I told him, I gave him a little right hook, got him in check. I told him he was absolutely wrong. How dare he go against you, me, and Courtney? How dare he go against me, you, and Courtney in terms of the prediction? So I know. So Will, you had picked AJ to win the fight, but you were a little bit skeptical, like many were, but you were a little bit skeptical. You're like, look, you were like, hey, you know what? I do think he's gonna win. Like I thought so too, but I said he has to make certain corrections that if he does, pretty much nothing Andy Ruiz really could do to beat him. What were your thoughts on the your reaction on the outcome? I mean, what did you think of AJ's performance?
AJ, to be honest with you, I am super, super impressed with him, to be honest. He followed directions. Him and his trainer. His trainer got tremendous heat. The first fight, they were telling him, leave your trainer. You're not getting any better. There's nothing you can do. This guy can't help you. And then they turned around. The game plan wasn't to stay there and slug. It was more to box, use your reach, use your height, which is boxing. It's hit and don't be hit. They're going to criticize you regardless. If you stay there and get hit with shots, they're going to be like, this man has no defense. If you move too much, you're running. You're damn if you do, you're damn if you don't. I'm just happy, like I said before, I like Andy Ruiz. I like Anthony Joshua. I just needed Anthony Joshua to win. And I'm not trying to set him up to put him on the chopping block, but that brings back the fight, the talking points of Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. I was a little bit skeptical. I was a little bit in doubt with Anthony Joshua, but insurmountable advantages with his height and his reach. I knew he would pull it out. I just thought he would get, in a little bit of a sticky situation because of his chin and him getting hit. But once I saw Andy Ruiz, like you said before, once I saw Andy Ruiz come in at 283 and Anthony Joshua, because us as boxing fans, we follow the sport. At the weigh-in, we already know what the deal is. 10 pounds lighter, that means he wants to box, he wants to move, he wants to stay on the outside. 283, look, I even honestly, if you follow, and I thank you for telling them about my the Instagram, but where my presence is more on Facebook than anything. That's why I try to drive everyone to go and follow us. But 283, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I said Andy Ruiz either got hurt in training camp, which he should have just. If you're gonna lie, just say I got hurt. I don't know what happened. I got hurt. I couldn't train the way I wanted to. Something went wrong, my hand, my elbow, and leave it at that. But the boxing public is up in arms with this gentleman, Andy Ruiz, because I don't separate him from a guy that just comes in and wants to get a paycheck. We know who I'm talking about. Those fighters that come in, no training, no nothing. Hey, man, put a pair of gloves on me. I need this money. I need bills to pay. Andy Ruiz did the same thing, but at a higher level. He didn't train at all and just came and took this money. He said, I'm getting this pay. I'm getting this paycheck. I know how to last for 12 rounds. I know how to survive, and just did a a disservice to himself. His trainer, Manny Robles, also on record. 268, guys. We're coming in 268. We had a tremendous training camp, 268. We should be at the same weight we were the first fight. I have a lot to say about that. I'm very, very disappointed in Andy Ruiz and Manny Robles, but it is what it is. Anthony Joshua got the victory, got his belts back, and now he has a bunch of mandatories. Everything is up in flames. Who knows who he's going to fight next, what he's going to do with titles. And we all know what fight we want to watch, and that's Deontay Wilder, or the winner of Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua.
Correct. Now I'm gonna go right to Courtney. Like I said, Courtney deserves a lot of credit. Courtney was one of the very, very few, if there was anybody else out there, honestly, that really was able to predict this. So Courtney basically predicted and said that the quick fame that Andy had gotten acclimated to was just going to be his demise and was going to affect him in training camp, and that AJ would come out and, clearly win and bring the belts back to the UK. Having said that, Courtney, did you think that AJ would have won with the game plan that they put into place?
I think it was all with AJ. It was all game plan. And you know what I'm saying. And I'm gonna be a detractor from mainstream opinion again with this opinion that I'm really, you know what I'm saying. I applaud, I salute AJ, and I give him his due for doing what, you know what I'm saying, I predicted he was gonna do, and that was take the belts back to England. But I'm really not impressed with that performance by AJ. I'm really not on the train. It's like, oh, he looks fantastic, he looks sensational or whatever. He simply did what he had to do in order to win. And as far as people putting it on McCracken, his trainer, as far as him not preparing AJ and shit like that, and I think preparation was a factor. Like I said, you can't do a training camp in Miami Beach. That was just asinine. So I think on that, the management side, the advisory side, where McCracken should have been in his ear a little more firmly, and as far as encouraging AJ to do the right thing in the preparation for the first fight. But I think it's the difference was AJ was able to stick to a game plan, and AJ trained and conditioned himself in a way that he was better suited to follow that game plan. You know what I'm saying? And also, I think it didn't help. I think it didn't hurt that he had, his former rival and now friend, Vladimir Klitschko, in his corner. And, he said he took that advice or that criticism that Klitschko gave him in that first, and when they met up, basically where Klitschko called him a CrossFit champion or whatever. And Klitschko got in his ear and said, hey, you need to put them weights down and just go back to old school boxing training. And that's what he did. Hitting the bag, skipping the rope, doing the road work, doing your sparring, doing your mitt work, basically fundamental boxing. And that's, that's what you saw with AJ all the way through that fight, up to that fight, and through that fight that led him to victory and led him to get his belts back. And so, you got to give him props for that. You got to give any man props who strips down, takes responsibility, strips down, goes back to the drawing board, goes back to bare bones, goes back to basics. And that's what he did. I think with, the public, a lot of people thought it was going to take more than that. A lot of people thought that AJ was going to be mentally damaged from that fight. And I said it last, the last podcast we did, is that, AJ was a man who had a, former gold medalist, former three straps, champion, carrying the UK and the British Commonwealth on his shoulders, and that all came crashing down. Of course he was going to come in there and be hungry. Of course he was. Now, that puts us on the other side with Ruiz. I don't know how people didn't see what I saw. And I think a lot of people did see what they saw, but sensationalism in boxing is a motherfucker, where they see a guy like AJ take a L in that dramatic form, on that dramatic upset, and automatically they're just fucking soured on him. And their predictions from that point are more based on them being mad that AJ lost to a guy like Ruiz than actually weighing the intangibles. And the intangibles, it was out there plain as day about 5 minutes after they put the straps around Ruiz's waist and around his shoulders. You know what I'm saying? Just that attitude he had and that look on his face, as far as when he won that fight. I said it. The most surprised person on earth that Andy Ruiz pulled that upset was Andy Ruiz. And as far as Tommy said, Ruiz catfished us. I was one of them. You know what I'm saying? For all for everything I said and all the predictions I made up to then, I took the bait up into the last one. You know what I'm saying? I said, well, damn, maybe it's muscle. Well, damn, he didn't take his shirt off. He had a sombrero on. Maybe that added a few pounds. You know what I'm saying? But then, you know what I'm saying, when we saw him, when all that shit came off and he walked in the room and he was that stripped down version of himself. And I think that's why at the root of it, that's why we all love boxing, because the truth comes out and there's nowhere to hide. And that's your defining moment. And we saw how AJ looked in his, and we saw how Andy Ruiz looked in his, and it was a no-brainer. But you know what I'm saying, I'll say two narratives before I hand it back. Deontay Wilder, they recently interviewed him, and they basically, paraphrased what Ruiz said in his post-fight comments. And Deontay, his response was, "The fuck do you mean you didn't train hard? The fuck do you mean you came into that unprepared?" You know what I'm saying? Ruiz was able to cash his second lottery ticket in on that, and it was basically a situation where he would cash his second lottery ticket by getting that rematch for as much money as he did. And if he did what he was supposed to do and came in there in a position to win that fight, not even win it, but make a fucking decent showing, he would have cashed even more lottery tickets. Yeah, he's going to get fights just based off being that tag as far as former champion or whatever. But imagine if Ruiz would have came in there prepared and shocked the world a second time, or or lived up to expectations that he was going to win that rematch, or at least made a halfway decent showing of it. You know what I'm saying? And now you know what I'm saying, Andy Ruiz is as he should be and as a fucking laughing stock, because you had something golden. Bob Arum said it himself. He said, this guy basically cashed out of his contract with me for $750,000 and fucking hit a bigger jackpot. And he just fucked it up. He squandered it. And I think that's why he's deserving of the ridicule that he had. But before I give it back, I'm gonna give one more insight into why I saw it and predicted it the way that I did. If you guys remember, before Top Rank went into the exclusivity deal with ESPN, Top Rank, they had a prospect-oriented show on a Spanish network called Una Más. Now, these shows were broadcast about, basically 2 shows a month, and it was on Una Más. They were Spanish broadcasts, but they were geared primarily at Hispanic up-and-coming prospects that were signed to Top Rank. The shows were called Tecate Presentantes Boxeo Solo. That's what the name of the show, Boxeo Solo cards. On one of those cards, when Andy Ruiz was still under Top Rank and still fighting on those shows, he was scheduled to fight Kevin Johnson in a fight just outside of Fresno, California, in Lenore at a casino down there. About a week before, they pulled him off the card. He was supposed to be headlining that card. They pulled him off the card, and Top Rank's explanation for pulling him off the card was Andy Ruiz is not mentally prepared to fight that evening. You know what I'm saying? So when you have a guy with a track record like that, when you're with a big promotion like Top Rank, when they have steady cards on TV and they're putting you in a position to headline, and I think that was the first card he was scheduled to be a headliner, and you're not mentally prepared to fight, that gives you some insight on not necessarily what Andy Ruiz was on a consistent basis, but that was a clear indicator of where Andy Ruiz could go, and that's where we saw him go in preparation in the lead up to this fight, and that's the result we got on Saturday.
Great points. And the defining moment for me was outside of the fight, and this is where I think Andy basically put himself at jeopardy of losing a lot of money. And that's simply when they asked him, what had happened, and he said, I came in out of shape. I didn't prepare as well as I should, and I just thought that I was like, that's so detrimental to your career, saying that, because this is probably the biggest fight at the biggest stage of your career ever, and this is as good as you train. This is what you want to show the people who you are. I mean, this is basically the reflection of what you are, who you are, the work you put in. And it was not just a disrespect for his training camp, but it was just a disrespect for boxing in general, that he didn't take it serious. There's no excuse for a guy like that to come into that sort of fight and then have that excuse at the end of it. It's just unexcusable. Aaron, I know you're on. What were your thoughts of Ruiz admitting not being in shape?
Yeah, I felt really deflated when he revealed that he was partying and overeating and not training to his max potential, especially for a heavyweight rematch. And before knowing all that, I was giving him the benefit of the doubt that hey, he was taking it serious. He was focusing on tactics and things of that nature. But just to hear that to hear him say that himself, that he should have trained as much harder, take it serious, no outside influences, not flashing his money, his purchases. It was this type of stereotypical stuff of a rise to fame type of stuff that you didn't want to believe that, hey, Ruiz, I wanted to believe like Ruiz, he wasn't like those similar stories. But yeah, it actually came true, and I was really deflated when he said those stuff. And and I think that really played a factor in the actual of his performance in the fight. So yeah, that was really deflating. Really like, wow, that's all you had to say about why you lost. And yeah, it's just really sorry about that. Really deflating. That's the key word.
He Chavez'd himself.
Pretty much.
He did worse than that. Will, were you surprised?
But y'all didn't bet me though. Y'all wasn't that confident.
True, we didn't.
I was about to say that, Tommy. Hey, we got it on a wax. You know what I'm saying? You gave me an opportunity to run it, and I was
You know what I'm saying?
I was
you know what I'm saying? That's all. So I'm gonna sit here and eat my crow, but you know what I'm saying? Y'all wasn't confident.
But can I add one more thing though? Like,
go ahead.
Yeah, given that, on the flip side, we all, AJ, he came out with the victory, but at the same time, I was kind of disappointed with AJ in the fact that he didn't, on his end, decide to push the gas pedal, because he could have. Like, he didn't have to fight that careful style of jab, fighting from the inside, playing it safe. But he decided to do that, and he didn't have to. He could have, being the former champion that he is, but now reclaiming his belts, he could have made a stamp on this. Hey, like, I'm the true champion. Let me attempt to knock Ruiz out, but he didn't go for it. So that's the other side now that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I think Courtney wants to redirect.
Let me redirect on that for 30 seconds, because that's a great point that Aaron brought up, man. And I'll say this too. As far as me looking at AJ's performance in that is, I think there was a few opportunities where he had a clear lane that if he would have just sat down in a few of those exchanges, he could have ended. He could have at least had Ruiz on his ass, like he had him on his ass the first fight. But what I took from that is, even though AJ, he got his belts back, he went back to the UK as a champion. I think that first fight at MSG is always going to be in his head. And you see some fighters, they can come back, they can get their belts back, and you can chalk it up to purely a bad night. and that, you know what I'm saying, that loss they took in that first fight, it doesn't define them. It doesn't have any lingering effects. I think that when we saw that night in MSG, AJ, he'll go on. He'll have an illustrious career. He'll have some more big wins. He'll perhaps have some more big losses. But that, you know what I'm saying, that stoppage in MSG, that is always going to be with AJ for the rest of his career. He is always going to be in part tentative and questioning because of that.
Yeah, and that goes a lot, or that says a lot. Even though, or despite the fact that Andy came in out of shape, the one thing that Andy possesses that is a problem for a lot of people and will be a problem for a lot of people is that he can come in out of shape, but he has very, very fast hands and he is heavy-handed. So that poses a problem not just for AJ. It poses a problem for a lot of guys. So, I mean, I knew that if AJ fought like he fought Joe Parker, really from the outside, used his reach advantage, used his jab to control the ring, I knew that this pretty much was going to be the fight that we would see. Some might call it a little bit boring. It all depends what type of fan you are. But, yeah, he was very cautious. I got to agree with you, Courtney. That fight, the first one at MSG, probably will be in the back of his mind for quite some time until he's able to score a big victory against a big opponent. But who knows? Time will tell. Definitely. I want to skip to another topic, one that's been trending a lot amongst AJ haters. And Will, I'm going to direct this question to you. What are your thoughts of people labeling AJ as a runner?
Man, how do I answer this question? I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I'm a type of reporter or whatever you want to call me, of boxing personality. Man, hey, you got to do anything you have to do to get this victory by any means necessary. To call him a runner is it's crazy. The man, I mean, you got to move. You can't let a counterpuncher. I mean, you can't lead. A counterpuncher is just going to wait for you to shoot. And for a puncher like Andy Ruiz, who's out of shape, don't let him set his feet. Don't let it set his feet. Every time he tries to set his feet, move. Keep him off balance. Move to the left. Move to the right. There's nothing. I'm like I told you. Damn if you do. Damn if you don't. If you stay there and take a shot. Oh, why is Anthony Joshua so dumb and stay there? Move, man. Use your height. Use your reach. Now he used his height and his reach and moved and clinched, because I knew the clinch game was going to have to be important. Clinch any opportunity you get. Now they're going to criticize him. So I'm going to say it again. Damn if you do, damn if you don't. You call them a hater. You know, there's just guys, you can do whatever you want in Anthony's situation, and they're going to criticize you. They're going to say something you did wrong. So I think he did what he had to do to get the victory, and that's all that matters. Now he revs up the talk again. Him and Deontay Wilder, or him or Tyson Fury, or I doubt there's going to be a trilogy between him and Andy Ruiz. So let's see what his next move is.
Correct, and I'm with you with that. I don't think there is a trilogy, just on the strength that Andy Ruiz came in very unprepared. I think that it's going to hurt his chances of having the trilogy. He's going to have to climb back up again in order for him to get another shot at AJ. But I've been wrong before. Who knows? Tommy, since you've been very vocal on Andy Ruiz beating AJ as far as a prediction, what are your thoughts of people talking about, AJ basically being a runner and not wanting to engage or not willing to engage with Andy Ruiz?
Like I said earlier, I actually give the dude credit for how he executed his game plan. I felt that he came in conditioned well. I felt that he also wanted to prove a point with what people have said about him in previous fights. It wasn't just his chin, it was his stamina as well. So I think that was a part of it. I mean, did he go in there, like Courtney said earlier, did he go in there to just win the fight? Yes. He wasn't going in there to absolutely dominate. He was going out to look good, and to just bring home the belts, and keep going with what he's trying to do, which is make that money. So he put himself in the position that he needed to be in. He didn't take any, massive chances or anything like that. He didn't go for the kill. He did what he had to do to get in there, earn that money, take them belts back, and get the dub. And, now he's going to move past Ruiz. And as we see, he's not conditioned. He's not ready. He ruined his chance. And Josh is just going to be on to the next.
Yeah, I saw a big man that came in, showed the world that he can last 12 rounds, that he can box on the outside. He showed again his technical fundamentals as he has shown in the past. I'm just surprised that people were making that sort of criticism, because he kind of fought like that against Joe Parker. I mean, if we remember that fight, he was very cautious against Joe Parker, fought very well on the outside. He kept Joe Parker at bay all the time throughout the entire, 12 rounds. He was very, very cautious. What I see is a guy who's disciplined to his craft, who came in and said, look, I'm going to stick to this game plan, and that's what I'm going to do. To hell with what people are going to think. I'm going to do what I got to do, and I'm going to fight from the outside. I'm going to make sure I leave here with all the belts, and that's the end of it. I see that. I see that point. But, with how he, I can see him getting the criticism. I can see it because for Courtney's points on what everybody saw with Ruiz, he should have dominated the dude, man. Like, he should have. So he can deserve some of this heat, but just being called a runner, I think, is way too far. Well, Tommy, he did dominate. I mean, based on the scorecards. I mean, if you look at the scorecards, he basically dominated Andy Ruiz. I mean, the scorecards the gaps were wide.
Oh, yeah. Look, I mean, dominate what somebody would expect him to do with somebody like Ruiz. That, Ruiz did win the first fight, and we expect more of him in this fight. But this whole story overall, he should have just taken that dude out, especially with him not being in shape. So that just gives even more to the story. Why didn't you just crush this dude? So I see the criticism, but he stuck to his game plan, and that I don't have a problem with that.
And I see him doing the same exact thing versus Usyk and versus Pulev. So this style that we just saw this weekend is going to be the same thing if he fights his mandatories for the WBO, Usyk and Pulev. He's going to box. That's what we're going to see. That's what we're going to see the next two fights. Even if he fights the winner of Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, he's just going to move. So we better get accustomed to watching Anthony Joshua do this, because this is what he's going to do moving forward.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you in that. Courtney, do you think he should have avenged his loss in a dramatic fashion? Do you think AJ should have done more?
I think he was certainly capable of doing so. I think the thing we've been hearing is a continued narrative that AJ had to morph into this kind of Klitschko-esque character in order to turn the corner, in order to win the fight, and this is what he needs to be now going forward in order to have continued success. But I think if we're latching onto that, we're forgetting that AJ was already a boxer. You know what I'm saying? I say a boxer that was worth his ilk. You know what I'm saying? He had pedigree. You know what I'm saying? Anybody who can win, anybody who wins a gold medal in the Olympics, they have boxing acumen. You know what I'm saying? And I think beforehand you know what I'm saying, he demonstrated that. You know what I'm saying? Time and again in wins, and that his ability to box, that's where his power and that's where the velocity on his punches, and that's what made him a dangerous puncher. Is that, you know what I'm saying, he was able to box and get people into position to, you know what I'm saying, to that point where he could have ended them. I think he could have done the same thing to Ruiz. So I'm not convinced that he needs to be this Klitschko-esque person going forward in order to be great. I think I think what I think what needs to happen from this point on, and what is he's on the way to doing in order to make it happen, is he has to exercise the demons that he carried into the ring with him that night at MSG. And I think with him, it's not going to be it's not going to be a 1, 2, or maybe even 3 or 4 fight process to do that. You know what I'm saying? That's going to have to be a continued part of his evolution. As Floyd Mayweather said, he's just like, yeah, I've never lost. I don't think about losing. He's like, I'm aware it could happen, but he's just like, dude, when you lose, that shit is in your head. And then, you know what I'm saying, and that never, because losing, whether, you lose by knockout, whether you lose by the referee stoppage, whether you lose because you quit in your corner or whatever, but when you lose, that becomes an option, even if it's not an option that you want, that you would be willing to choose. But you've been there before, so you can lose. You know what losing feels like. And when you do something over and over, you do something more than once, it becomes easier to do it that next time, and it becomes easier to accept it that next time. So what AJ has to do, as far as his evolution as a fighter and as a potential great in this sport, is exercise that loss out of his mind. As far as, he can't exercise out of his mind that happened, but he needs to come to a conclusion within himself that that's some shit he never wants to happen to him ever again. And knowing that it's around the corner and it could potentially happen, and his vulnerabilities are out there, that's what that's what he's going to have to decide. That's how he's going to, with that in mind, that's how he's going to have to decide to carry forward. As far as his potential matchups with Pulev, I think he can box Pulev like he did Charles Martin. I think he can box Pulev, the way he got rid of, since some of the guys he was getting rid of coming up. Dominic Brazil, Eric Molina. I think I see that fight potentially going that way. He might carry, Pulev might carry a few rounds, but Pulev, as we saw when he fought Klitschko, Pulev has some very bad habits, especially within exchanges, and he can go night. And I think AJ still has that killer mentality that can be switched on to where he could that result is very possible against Usyk. I'm intrigued by that matchup because I don't know how AJ is going to maneuver that realistically in order to win it. I think he could fight a fight like like he fought against Ruiz, where he could move, he could lean up. But the thing is, Usyk can move too, and Usyk can move. He's carrying a lot of a lighter load. So that's gonna be very interesting and very intriguing as far as how he comes into that fight and maneuvers it. And I think that's why, with that in mind, that's why that fight is not going to be next. I think they're going to use that. I think his team is going to use that advantage and that leverage of both of them being with Matchroom in order to put that fight off, and they're going to go and they're going to move to take care of Pulev to be next up. And then as far as that, from there, formulating a game plan with which they can deal with Usyk, because I'm not convinced. How should I say it? I'm not a person who is totally convinced of Usyk's bona fides as a heavyweight. We've only seen him once, and I don't think we saw enough of him in that one performance. I know he's fought a couple of fights that were in the World Series of Boxing, which count as professional fights because they didn't have the headgear at the time, where he was at heavyweight. I think he already defeated Joe Joyce in that format, so we know he can deal with heavyweights. But as far as these super heavyweights, these heavyweights that are lining up at the top 10 currently, I don't know how he's going to, I don't know how his bona fides are going to cash out against those guys. But what I do know, as far as Usyk against any top 10 heavyweight right now, he is going to be absolute hell on wheels. And that's going to be interesting to see how AJ deals with that, and how AJ what kind of style AJ adopts as far going forward in dealing with guys, particularly like Usyk.
Well said. Great point. Aaron, I know there's a couple of comments and questions on our Facebook Live feed. Care to read a couple of them?
Yeah. First off, I want to, thank everyone to those viewing our Facebook live feed. We got some interesting points from Danny Landberg. What's up, man? He says, I quote, Wilder and Fury would have knocked Ruiz out within 5 rounds, and he followed up with, all that fight showed me was that if AJ was to fight Wilder and Fury, he'd be on the run all night and not on the attack, which kind of, goes back to what Will said about, hey, we got to get used to AJ fighting this style for his next 2 or 3 fights moving forward.
Fury, hold on. Fury went life. He just went life and death with Otto Wallin. I'm sorry, but I don't think Fury is knocking cats out like that. And you know what I'm saying? And Ruiz has a little bit of chin, and Ruiz has some gumption where he will get up off the canvas on you. We've seen that. But as far as as far as Fury going in there and racking a guy out like that, I'm not convinced. I'm really not. So I gotta disagree with the homie Danny Landberg on that point as far as Fury is concerned.
I have to agree with Courtney as well. And also keep in mind, Andy Ruiz doesn't matter if he comes in at 283, 285, whatever it is, he has absolute great hand speed. And that's what I think makes him extremely very underrated at the current moment. We could talk about his loss and the poor performance, but there's a reason why Anthony Joshua was very cautious and didn't want to sit on his punches sometimes, because Andy Ruiz is the type of guy that can hit you a 3-4 piece combo within seconds. He's got power and he's got speed in his hands. So that's a problem. And the fact that he has that height disadvantage, which in turn, it might not make sense, creates an advantage for him, is also an issue. And I can't see Fury knocking Andy Ruiz out. Andy could give any one of the top 3, top 4 guys a problem, again, solely on his hand speed. You have more questions, Aaron? More feedback?
That's the only comments I have so far. But just a couple of shout outs, I guess. Shout out to Dan Landberg. Thank you for your comment. Gary Kittleson from 3D Boxing. Julio Z. Alex Salazar. Sean Fitzgerald from Just Boxing Live. What's up, man? Murid Muhammad, who trains Duarn Vu. What's up, man? I hope all is well. And that's all I have right now.
All right, now switching gears for a second. We're all talking about AJ. Tommy, and I'm going to direct this question to you. What's next for Andy Ruiz? How does he bounce back? What's the game plan for him going forward, considering the fact that he had to have left Al Heyman with a little bit of a sour taste in his mouth, considering the shape that he came in to the rematch? What do you think is next for him?
Let him fight Ortiz.
That's an interesting matchup. And why do you think?
Exactly for that reason, because I think I'm thinking stylistically that this will be, one, both of them are right in that next level at this point of the elite caliber fighters in the division. Let them both fight it out. It'll be an interesting fight. I think it would be a good one to watch. I think that both of their styles will complement each other in the ring to make for something good for us to see. So, I mean, hey, while everybody else dukes it out at the top for all of the belts, let them two eat right there, and they get another chance at some scraps if they look good in a fight against each other.
Courtney, I want to see. I want to see Ruiz against Areola and Adam Kanowski.
Yes.
Three-way WWE style cage match to the death, fucking pie eating contest. Let the fat boy self-eliminate, yo. May the best fat boy win, yo.
Table match.
You guys are out of your mind. But Courtney, what's the reaction?
You will pay to see it, and you will invite a friend.
Probably. But what's your thoughts on a Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz fight? Would you watch it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you think it could be a competitive fight?
And you know what? Because you know what, with Ruiz and Ortiz, that's a perfect stylistic clash where you got a guy with superior hand speed in Ruiz, where you got a guy who was probably still one of the best pure boxers in the heavyweight division.
Exactly.
But that's a fight I see Ortiz not dominating, but I see him winning it clearly if Ruiz is if his mind and his head ain't right. Because this is the thing about Ruiz. We all harp on the hand speed, but it's fundamentals in boxing. The hand speed is not going to be effective without smart feet, and that was a factor against AJ. You know, AJ got on that bicycle and moved on him and shit. You know what I'm saying? With Ruiz, the hands, they were, you know what I'm saying, the hands were crispy still. You know what I'm saying? He was still hitting AJ with some shit that made him, you know what I'm saying, that gave him flashbacks to MSG. But the thing is, Ruiz could never set his feet when he needed to, and he could never cut the ring off when he needed to, and he could never rear up and just go after AJ when AJ was going back in straight lines like he was. So the thing is with Ruiz, his vulnerabilities are out there too, because we all know he's got fast hands, but his footwork is completely underdeveloped into liability. And I think in a head-to-head matchup with Ortiz is very capable of exploiting that.
That's definitely a great point, and I'm glad you just brought out his footwork. Here's what impressed me about AJ. I don't know if you guys caught it, but running around the ring, moving around, that's great. But what I did, and what I was gonna say is any boxer can pretty much do that. But what I did notice with AJ. Almost like something I noticed when Errol fought Mikey Garcia. Every time Mikey was getting ready to plant his feet, Errol would put him off balance. But I noticed with AJ is every time Andy planted his feet and got settled in, AJ would move. Like he waited for the opportunity. He stood in the pocket, walked back. As soon as Andy planted his feet to get ready to engage, moved. He did that very, very well throughout all 12 rounds. And that was quite impressive because he noticed it probably in the first fight that Andy he's got to plant his feet in order to throw his punches. And he exploited that very, very well throughout the fight. Moving on to the next question, and I'm gonna direct this question to Will. What does the victory mean for AJ in terms of leverage now against Tyson Fury and Deontay?
I said it before and I'll say it again. AJ. I mean, a lot of people are still gonna disagree with me. I think he's the A side again. I don't care about him how he sells. It boils down asses in seats. In boxing, that's what it is. And AJ. People criticize him about running. The man's a ticket seller. He's gonna sell regardless. They love him out there. They love him everywhere. They even love him here in the States, even though his performance was but they still love him. So he's still the A side. Versus Tyson Fury, I think it's a little tougher. It's a little tougher. They're both from the UK. Tyson Fury, tremendous backstory. He'll sell himself, WWE. Cracking jokes, calling guys names, saying he's the greatest. He moves like a lightweight, so that might be a little bit tougher. But again, in negotiations with Deontay Wilder, I think Deontay Wilder is going to have to bend a little to make the fight happen, and I think AJ will call the shots.
Courtney, I'd like to get also your opinion on this matter. What do you think him bringing back now the belts back home? What type of leverage does he have now again versus Tyson Fury and Deontay? Does he remain the A side?
Against Wilder? Yes, he's still the A side because what you're saying for all of Wilder's sensational performances, Wilder is still not putting 100,000 people or 100,000 asses in seats in soccer stadiums. AJ, AJ is doing that, and he will continue to do that. Keep an eye on his homecoming. Well, when they bring him back to the UK, people are going to people are going to embrace him. And we all know, and we've said several times in the show, British fans, they travel and they travel well. And you know what I'm saying, because of that, the AJ, you still have to see him as the A side. That A side kind of goes down to kind of like an A- side, because the thing is he's carrying a loss to a far inferior opponent into that fight, and Wilder doesn't have that. He doesn't have that mark on his record. So you know, I still see AJ as an A side in a potential head to head with Wilder, but the thing is I don't see him as heavily as an A side as I did, you know, a few months before. As far as against Wilder, as far as against Fury, that's you know, they're going to have to make those concessions 50-50 down the line, because they're both those two are both they're both putting it on for the UK, and they are you know what I'm saying, they're both heavily regarded there. You know, as far as that matchup between an AJ and a Fury, that would undoubtedly happen in the UK, and you know, you would look at that, and they would pretty much both down the line, up the middle, bring 50. You know, it would be 50-50, because they would bring 50-50 into the fan base. You know what I'm saying? You'd have to say Fury has 50% of the public support in that matchup, and AJ would have 50% of the public support in that fight. So on that, you know what I'm saying, you have to look at, as far as AJ's future fights or potential fights with Wilder and Fury, you have to look at them on separate merits, because there's a different dynamic to each of those fights.
Tommy, what is your reaction? And I read this a couple of days ago. So I don't know how many streaming viewership they had on DAZN for the AJ versus Andy rematch, but I do know that Sky Sports has confirmed that they had 1.6 million pay-per-view buys, which makes it the highest for Anthony Joshua's career.
Damn.
What was your reaction? I don't know if you knew about it, but what is your reaction, you know, being told that number in terms of his star power?
Hey, they played that shit right. They took it over there to Saudi. You know, I'll say this, you know, the way that his persona is, the way that he carries himself, you know, the way that he is, you know, a gentleman and respectful in a lot of different ways, you know, post fight, all of that stuff. He knows how to market himself. You know, Eddie Hearn knows how to market as well. So I mean, those are outstanding numbers, especially in these days right now, with the way everything is. But I mean, shit. You know, I know that there was a lot of talk when the 85 million, you know, number was floated out originally. And he knows what he's doing. So, yeah, I mean, shit. Those are some damn good numbers right now. A definite A side right now. As far as that,
It's hard.
No, hey, that's it. Hey, those are some damn good numbers though. That's what I'm like, damn, I didn't hear that number until you just said that number. So
it's been confirmed. So the number was initially thrown out was 1.2 million, and Sky Sports has confirmed 1.6 million pay-per-view, which is, you know, I mean, look, the pay-per-view, you know, the price point in the UK is not as high as here, obviously, but $24.99, that's the price point for that fight, and it's normally even lower than that. I think $19.99 is like the average. But 1.6 million at $24.99. I mean, shit. Pull out the calculator or don't pull it out.
Exactly.
It's great revenue. It's like, you know, that's over 35 million pounds, which is over $40 million. Which is, again, you know, this is where I'm convinced the AJ is the A side with both Deontay and even with Tyson Fury.
But I'm still Bomb Squad.
Of course, till this day.
Hold on. Before I forget, I have a question. I know one of you guys will be able to answer. Does Anthony Joshua, and will he cross over back? I mean, will he cross the pond again to fight in the U.S.? Because what I'm thinking is Tyson Fury is fighting the majority of his contract with Bob Arum and Frank Warren here in the States, and he came over here and fought our best heavyweight on American soil and pulled out a draw and took the rematch once again here in the United States. Does AJ have to come over here and cross over? And when it comes down to leverage, does Tyson Fury, because him fighting our best heavyweight here in the States, give him a little bit more leverage over Anthony Joshua? You understand everything I just said?
Yes, and that's a great question. And I think here's whatever happens in February, if Tyson does pull out the victory, then I can see Tyson being closer to being the A side, if not the A side, at that point if he does beat Deontay. I can see that, But there is rumor that Tyson and Deontay do have a 3-fight agreement. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what's been surfacing, that they do have another fight after February in contract. But I mean, if the smart money is, you ship Tyson Fury out to the UK, let him fight against AJ, because it's just too much money on the table for that fight to be passed up. And I think that's a fight that AJ probably wouldn't be hesitant to take, because I think in terms of styles, I think AJ's got a much better shot of beating Tyson Fury than he does Deontay. I actually think that AJ beats Tyson Fury. I really do. I think he's got enough arsenal to be able to beat Tyson Fury. Problem with Deontay, obviously, he poses that one tool that is going to be an issue for somebody like AJ, who's shown that he's very chinny to be able to overcome. Whereas Tyson Fury, like Courtney mentioned about 10, 15 minutes ago, Tyson Fury is not putting cats out on a canvas like that. He doesn't have the power. I don't think he's got the power to scare somebody like AJ, despite AJ being chinny. I think that's a fight that, whether he wins or loses, meaning AJ or even Tyson Fury, it isn't going to hurt their career. They can still continue to move on and still continue to make money. Now if AJ takes a fight against Deontay and gets dropped, that fight will hurt AJ. No matter how much love he has from his fan base, if he ends that fight on the canvas against Deontay, that's going to hurt his career a lot.
The potential for AJ and Fury is always going to be there, though. You know what I'm saying? That's a domestic rivalry. It's finally died down where people are. If you look at it, this instance has finally died down where people are just over it and don't give a fuck anymore. But if you look at it, look at Amir Khan and look at Kell Brook. You know what I'm saying? For all they had been through, you know what I'm saying? For as far as that many times as fucking Amir Khan got woke up with the sleeping salts, for Kell Brook getting his face, you know what I'm saying, both sides of his face literally broken in 2 straight fights, people were still screaming for that fight on both sides of the pond. You know what I'm saying? So, like, when you got a good domestic rivalry like that with AJ and as far as Fury, and Fury be talking that shit. You know what I'm saying? If Fury has, you know what I'm saying, he immediately took to social media talking mass amounts of shit about AJ even after, you know what I'm saying, he took his belts back and shit. You know what I'm saying? With Fury's ability to be antagonistic and to talk up a fight, people, you know what I'm saying, people in the UK are going to clamor for that fight for as long as it's viable. So, as far as AJ, whatever happens in a potential future fight between AJ or Wilder, whatever happens within, you know what I'm saying, the rematch or the trilogy with Fury and Wilder, AJ and Fury, they're going to be there for each other, and that's going to be a fight. If anything else, people in the UK, that's going to be important to them, and we all know that the British hold boxing in a slightly higher reverence than, you know what I'm saying, the United States. Yes, they have dramatically a lower population in comparison to the United States. The United States, this is where the money is for boxing, but as far as the reverence and people who are willing to come out and support 2 fighters, people who are willing to put $20 to $30 on the pay-per-view because that's how much it costs over there. The fans in the UK, they will invest in a future and a potential fight between AJ and Fury.
Yeah, I mean, you do bring up a good point. Yeah, you're right about the interest level probably being there. I just think that considering how massive that fight can be right now, and especially now with AJ making I'd like to talk about this, which is the amount of money this guy is making in boxing. Everybody keeps talking about Canelo this, Canelo that, how much money he's made and how much money he's making, but the amount of money that AJ is bringing in per fight is unprecedented. Fighting a guy with Andy Ruiz's popularity, which is insanity. I'm hearing, and I don't think that it's true, but I'm hearing somewhere close to $80 million against Andy Ruiz after all pay-per-view and gate revenue, etc.
And that's largely because of how AJ has structured his deal. Canelo just took a check. You know what I'm saying? He signed a deal that was worth a set amount of money. You know what I'm saying? There's some perks on top of that the zone is going to kick to him because due to viewership and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? And endorsements and stuff like that. But with AJ, he was really smart in how he's done business with Eddie Hearn and with Matchroom. Is that yes, he's guaranteed a significant amount for his purse, but as far as the numbers, the pay-per-view numbers in the UK, he draws a very substantial portion of that, and that's why he makes the money he did. And he took that pointer from Mayweather as far as, all right, you know what I'm saying, also, you know what I'm saying, you can give me this check, but I need to be guaranteed a certain amount of the numbers, and that's where the advantage is. Especially Canelo now fighting on DAZN where he's got the set amount, for his contract, and you got to think about it. Canelo, his fight in Mexico, his fights are free to air on TV. There's no pay-per-view in Mexico. So that's, you know what I'm saying,
correct.
So that's the stark difference between, you know what I'm saying, between the deals that those two made with Eddie Hearn and with Matchroom.
Yeah, and because of Canelo's star power in terms of the location. AJ being from the UK makes a big difference where he can cash on the zone contract and he can still cash out with pay-per-view, where Canelo really doesn't have that luxury, simply because that's not the way, things get aired in Mexico. So, I mean, that's a great point. But going back to AJ and Tyson Fury, I just think that the buzz is so big right now. I think that if AJ were to lose against, let's say, Deontay first and then fight, of course, the money will still be there. I just feel it's going to deflate a little bit of that attraction. Whereas if he does fight Tyson and if he loses to Tyson, I don't think it's going to affect him so much, and he could still have a big, huge pay-per-view fight, or a big fight against Deontay here in the States or wherever he fights Deontay. Who knows? We don't know. Wherever it is. But
we might be very well ahead of ourselves. We might be very well ahead of ourselves because with this mandatory against Usyk, it's a very real possibility that Usyk might beat AJ.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I was just about to say that.
It's a super real possibility that Usyk could beat AJ.
I totally disagree.
Yeah,
I think AJ beats Usyk going away.
I'm not. Hey, Will, I'm not saying it's set in stone. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it definitively. I think, I like AJ's chances. You know what I'm saying? Depending on how he comes into that fight, but I think we got to be realistic. Is it? You know what I'm saying? Is that with Usyk stylistically, he has every potential to go in there and beat AJ.
And
that can't be denied.
To be honest with you. No, definitely can't be denied.
Yeah. This is simple. It's simple. Tommy, who do you think will win? If you say Usyk, we know that AJ is going to win.
That's what they say about me. Every time I pick a fighter, go with the other guy.
Hey, I'm undefeated in bet fights. I can say that. So my accuracy is pretty on point. I'm just wrong this one time. But in this right now, I'm going with AJ. But as Courtney said, I do feel that Usyk has a chance, a nice chance. Like that would be a great fight, and it would depend on which AJ we see in the ring.
So Usyk beats Chisora? I mean, not Chisora, Dillian White, if they fight? Dillian White? Or Chisora?
He's going up against Chisora next. Or
yeah, Chisora next.
He's in line. If he doesn't fight AJ, if he doesn't get signed off to fight AJ next, he's more than likely fighting Chisora. That's the word around the campfire right now.
Yeah, he knows. We all know he's not fighting Usyk next, or AJ rather. So we know that. So you could bet, you could take that in bank. He's going to fight Chisora next. AJ is going to be fighting Kulak next for sure, 100%. You know, it's a smart move on everybody's part. And now you build up that fight anyway with AJ and Usyk.
And Usyk would be stupid not to take that step aside deal. You already know Matchroom is going to offer him an insane amount of money to step aside. So.
Yeah, it's probably going to be It's definitely going to be a 7-figure payday for him just to step aside. Look, Eddie Hearn, I'll step aside too for $2-3 million. Send it to my my checking account. Yeah. And want to digress really quick. You guys all probably watch the undercards. There's one, and I want to switch gears here just for 1 second before we go back to AJ and Andy. But there was a fight, not an impressive fight in itself, but the opponent who won was impressive. Somebody now who's on my radar, and a young fighter in the middleweight division named Diego Pacheco. Was anybody impressed by this kid?
He had the knockout, the one in the first round, right?
First round, right before AJ fought. First round, Diego Pacheco. But it wasn't even just about the knockdown. It was just the way the kid moved. The way he moved, his ring generalship, his IQ, just something just tells me this kid's going to be a star in the next 4 or 5 years. Just a star.
I actually saw him fight in the Logan KSI undercard. He's a very aggressive fighter. He knows he's an attacker, but also a boxer at the same time. Very smart at his very young age. So a very big upside for Pacheco. And yeah, as you said, I'm very excited what the future holds for him.
Yeah, they thought that he came in slightly under the 168. So technically, it was a super middleweight fight. I'll say this: if they can slim that kid down to 160, he's going to be a fucking problem. You know, if they can get him consistently around the 160, between 160 and 165 for these fights on the come up, I think they can go ahead and fast track him. That's I see that because I see that potential in him now. His size combined with his aggressiveness and his assertiveness, and if he shows any type of chin, I think he can be a huge problem at 160, especially now that it looks like Canelo is not looking to come back there, and they're moving Jaime Munguia up. So 160 is about to get a lot younger, and you might see the face of that movement in Pacheco.
Yeah, and you're right about that. His size is going to pose a lot of problem because he is 6'4". Doesn't look like it, but he's 6'4". He's got a huge reach advantage, and the kid can box, and he can fucking punch. Oh my God, he was just like, I was so impressed. I was like, I had to wipe my eyes down. I was like, what am I seeing here? 18 years old, and you're that mature in the ring, and you could tell his temperament is great at 18 years old. He knocked the hell out of his opponent, and instead of celebrating, he stood back. And that's a reflection of his temperament, a reflection of his maturity at that age. Most guys would have been jumping on the ring, pounding their chest, hoorah, hoorah. No,
doing backflips.
Poised. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean, Tommy? Like, the kid stayed poised. I mean, he was poised, he was calm, just very, very impressive. I'm eager to see what this kid's going to bring to the table in the next 4 to 5 years. He seems like he's got all the tools to be an absolutely phenomenal fighter moving forward. You can tell he's already a very, very good fighter. So moving forward. Will, did you get a chance to watch the kid fight right before the AJ fight?
Absolutely. What is there not to like? Like you said everything, all my points. 18 years old, 6'4", aggressive, great management behind him. Everything is on the up and up with this kid, man. I can't wait to see more of him.
Yeah,
but yo, since somebody
good.
mentioned backflips, you know what I'm saying, Tommy, since somebody mentioned backflips, hey, are we gonna talk about Teofimo?
Yes, sir.
Are we
Hey,
gonna talk
you
about
see what,
Are we
you
gonna
see what I
talk
was
about
throwing down?
We're going to get to that topic very, very soon, within the next couple of minutes. So, switching gears, digressing from the AJ fight, we're going to start talking about the doubleheader this weekend at MSG. You have Terrence Crawford fighting a guy I could barely pronounce his name, Kavilaskas, mandatory for a WBO fight. And then you have, obviously, Teofimo fighting Richard Comey for the IBF Lightweight Championship. Let's get into Teofimo first. Let's get into the Teofimo Richard Comey, because what the outcome of that fight has a lot to do with who's going to fight Loma next. So that's why I want to talk about that fight. Spend a little bit more time, because I'm a little disappointed in what the opponent Crawford's going to fight next. But since Courtney, you brought it up, who do you think is gonna win that fight? What do you think is the outcome of that fight coming up next in this Saturday?
All right, I'm going to try to make my comments very brief, because I know we only got about 20 minutes left. But I'll say this, man. As far as Teofimo and Richard Comey, I know after Teofimo's last performance against Nakatani from Japan, a lot of people were very underwhelmed off that performance. And it's coming out more and more that Teofimo was not as focused as he should have been, because he's dealing, or continues, I don't know, but with a lot of family drama, and that family drama is centered around basically the choice in woman he chose to marry. So we know with Teofimo and his backstory is basically he's carried his family on his back. You know what I'm saying, as far as the hopes, the dreams, and the economic livelihood of his family on his back from, pretty much since he was like 6 or 7 years old with his boxing thing. And now that dynamic is falling apart, that has obviously affected him in many ways that have manifested themselves in the ring. I'm just going to say, as far as saying all that and how I see the fight going this weekend, I think Teofimo is going to cut. I think he's heard the pundits dismissing him off that last performance. I think he's got a chip on his shoulder from everything from his family dynamic falling apart, his wife not being accepted, right down to his dog dying, who he's still saying he's mad over that shit. I saw him in New Orleans, post-fight, and, that really tripped me out when this dude said, he was pissed off at the world. He was going to knock everybody the fuck out because his dog died. A person who is carrying that shit on his back, they either fold or they kick it to the next level of greatness. And I'm going to say this. I still believe in Teofimo Lopez. I think even with Comey being a hell of an opponent in front of him and all the potential for disaster right there, I think Teofimo is going to he's going to materialize this into his greatest performance yet, and he's going to shine. And I'm picking Teofimo. I'm not going to say whether it's by knockout or unanimous decision, but that's going to be a defining performance this weekend. We're going to see one from Teofimo Lopez.
Great analogy. Tommy, what are your thoughts? Who do you think is going to come out victorious in that fight, and why do you think?
I'm riding with Teofimo Lopez. Comey's going to be a fucking dog of a fight for him, but I feel that he's going to pull it out. I think that things are lining up for him after that last fight, for him to get this shot, at Loma. And I think that this is what everybody's going to be waiting for as well, is to see what we get in this performance from Teofimo Lopez against Comey, so we can match up what we think we may see against Loma. Because his trajectory is, he's got a lot ahead of him, and I think he's going to need to pull out this victory this weekend. I think we'll see a lot. We'll see some things that he'll obviously have to learn and grow on. He's going to get a little bit exposed, but I think he's going to show the dog that he really has, and he's going to make that shit happen, man.
Good points. Will, who do you think is going to win that fight? And why do you think they're going to win that fight?
Oh my God, this fight is so tough to predict. Richard Comey is already, he's battle tested. Like I said in my regular social media, fought Robert Easter Jr., debatable loss. Denis Shavakov, debatable loss. Beat Raimundo Beltran, but I know Raimundo Beltran is a little bit past his, well, a lot past his prime, over the hill. Teofimo Lopez, man, I've seen him get dropped a few times. I know it's sparring, but seen him get dropped. And then after all the issues he's having, that who said it? Anthony? Was it Anthony? With the dog and the girl not being, his wife not being accepted into the family. Courtney. This is definitely the wrong guy to come in with all these issues and coming off a lackluster performance versus Nakatani. I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I'm straddling the fence. I feel like Comey's gonna pull off the upset, but he's also a wild guy. He's not technically sound. Forget it. I'm going with a razor thin split decision. I'm going with Teofimo Lopez, just because his defense is tighter, his punches are sharper. They're not as wide and loopy as Richard Comey. So I'm gonna have to go with Teofimo Lopez by razor thin split decision.
Yeah, and it seems like the betting odds are favoring Teofimo slightly, not by much, but he is the betting favorite. In my personal opinion, I just think that Teofimo is a little bit green for a fighter like Richard Comey, who is battle tested, like you said. Aaron, what are your thoughts? I know you're high also on Teofimo. We've talked about getting him on the show before in the past. He has had some impressive wins in the past, but his last victory wasn't a great reflection of his past work. Who do you think is going to win that fight this coming weekend?
Despite the so-called struggles he had in his last fight, I mean, that's too much of a small sample size to put a judgment on him. I think that was just his first rangy fighter, but I think he's learned from that experience, and going up against Richard Comey, as long as Teofimo doesn't shell up too much in the middle of the ring, because Comey, I could envision Comey like punching around his guard from the distance, doing that. So I don't think, as long as Teofimo, be defensive minded, but also mix it up, work angles in the middle of the ring, but don't get too defensive. He has to, most of the time be the first to the punch, be the aggressor, and fight smart, and keep it in the middle of the ring. And I expect Teofimo to win. I don't know if it's going to be by knockout, but I say by decision. It'll go to the judges in Teofimo's favor.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough fight to call before the bell, because both fighters obviously have special skills. They've shown that they can excel at a big stage, but we've seen that more with Richard Comey, especially considering that he does have 2 losses, but they're 2 questionable losses. And after those losses, which was a couple of years back, he's bounced back very well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on Saturday. Obviously, the other fight that's happening on Saturday is Terrence Crawford versus Kavaliauskas. I don't see, is it only me, or I don't see a lot of promotion for this fight? Is it anybody else? It's been poorly marketed.
Hardly
none.
Very minimal.
Yes, it's very, very minimal. I've seen a couple of commercials in the last few days, literally. Before that, it was super, super slow. In the last maybe 2 to 3 days, they've turned it up just a notch, and not much at that.
And I'm going to tell you why
fight.
I'm going to tell you why the promotion has been minimal on this. Is because Top Rank already knows they've already accepted they are going to take a loss as far as revenue on this fight. People, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times we think, well, they should promote, they promote. Promotions, you know what I'm saying? Promoting a fight, it costs money. And so the thing is,
Correct.
no matter who Terrence Crawford gets in there against, Top Rank has to pay him at least $3 million. You know what I'm saying? Off top. You know what I'm saying? But they already know. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to spend a bunch of money promoting this fight when they know it's a mandatory defense. It's against a garbage-ass opponent, and Crawford has very few prospects of fighting a top-tier guy or a top-10 guy at welterweight. So therefore, you know, aside from a significant Lithuanian population, coming out to support Kavaliauskas in New York, the ticket sales are not going to be that great either. So I think what we're seeing is a symptom of Top Rank's acceptance of, well, we got to take care of this mandatory. We're just going to put this fight on and keep the losses minimal.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I'm going to have an open-ended question, not directed to anybody. Just say yes or no, whoever thinks it. Does anybody think that Crawford or Crawford's opponent has a chance?
Fuck no.
Yeah, exactly. Based on the silence. Which leads to my next question. My next question is more interesting. So there are reports that came out in the last 24, 48 hours that after this fight that Bob Arum is planning on a potential Bud Crawford versus Sean Porter fight. Has anyone heard of that or read that article? And what are your reactions to a potential fight between the both of them?
Yeah, I've heard it. He's got Bob Arum. It's no surprise. He's got to. And I'll say this: we saw on last week's card where Carlos Adames who was going for a vacant belt at 154, got upset by Patrick Teixeira from Brazil. And what the word around the campfire was that after this fight, they were to potentially move Crawford up for a one-off fight at 154 against Carlos Adames. Until they could work out, or cultivate some more opponents for him to potentially come up to 147 or he could cross the street. That got blown up. So basically what we're seeing, as Arum mentioning Porter now, is the acceleration of the plan post a potential fight with Adames. So that is no surprise at all. But this I wouldn't say it's a move as far as desperation, but this is Arum basically floating Porter as a potential opponent. It's something that's got to happen because otherwise Crawford has no other credible opposition at 147.
Correct. And this question, Aaron, do you think that Top Rank is doing Crawford a huge disservice in the last 2 years in terms of his marketability, especially right now at the current moment where we can argue this is Bud Crawford's peak? I mean, he is already in his 30s.
I think they did a great disservice to Terrence Crawford because I think it comes down to Arum just being the one to extend that bridge over to the other major promotional conglomerates to make meaningful fights for Crawford. But so far during I think his 2-year tenure with Crawford, Arum hasn't really done much to. I mean, he has a more meaningful unification fights yet for Crawford. So yeah, I think it's a real disservice, and he locked them. He locked them to a long-term deal, knowing I think that he wasn't gonna knowing that he's gonna give him mostly just mandatories and not really high-profile fights. So I think so.
Tommy, what are your thoughts on Bud's career, where it's going, and where it should be at, specifically now at, he's 32 years old. What do you think should be done better?
Man, I had to stop saying this shit, but I said a long time ago that before he even signed that damn deal, he should have left. I've always, even since way back in the Floyd days, had, this semi-hatred for how Aram gets down. And this is just the same thing. It's the same exact thing. Yes, he's doing him a disservice, but he's doing that because he knows he can. He knows he can. He knows that Crawford signed that deal. He knows that Crawford was going for that bank, and he got it. But he basically sold his career for it. And now he's where he's at in his career. That's on him. And that's his problem for letting that ink dry on that deal. But at the same time, the elephant in the room that's not being discussed is we do know that Aram's pet is Loma. ESPN's pet is Loma. It's not Terrence Crawford, even though we can say it and we all know that Terrence has had the much better resume as a pro in boxing, period, to compare him. So absolute disservice, and he should have left a long time ago. So for me, he's getting what he deserves right now, unfortunately.
Terrence Crawford signed that deal because he was promised Pacquiao. You know what I'm saying? And as far as we're talking about in terms of selling your career, I don't think that Crawford necessarily sold his career for the money or the goals per se. I think he sold his career because he was banking on making his career off of beating Pacquiao's ass. And Pacquiao saw that.
He should have listened to Floyd.
Report surface, Janky Pacquiao's wife, Janky Pacquiao, said, "You will not fight Terrence Crawford. You will not fight Terrence Crawford." And Pacquiao took his ass over to PBC, and now look where his career is headed. So basically, that was a very whoever's behind that, Crawford made a very horrible miscalculation in that he was banking on that Pacquiao fight to define him. And it's never going to happen. And in the long run, he is now stuck in a slave deal per se with Bob Arum. That's the way that cookie crumbled.
That's why I got a problem with it. Should have went the Floyd route, baby.
Will, what are your thoughts on what Courtney just mentioned regarding Terrence Crawford being misled in terms of thinking he would have a fight against Manny Pacquiao?
I mean, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Oh, no, I mean, we can see what's happening. It's right there, right before our eyes. No Pacquiao fight. Hopefully, look. I'm not a big Crawford fan, but I want every fighter, at the level he's at, to succeed. He just doesn't have the opposition in his promotional company to grow him the way he needs to. Hopefully, this Sean Porter fight will go through. If he beats Sean Porter, we don't know what's going on with Errol Spence. Danny Garcia has a fight with I forgot what's his name. Someone help me out. Throw me that name. Well, Danny Garcia is a big name welterweight. He has a fight coming up. He gets past that opponent. Probably we could get Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford just needs something to happen. He already signed that deal. There is no turning back, so he has to make the best of it. It's either just fight a bunch of nobodies, and what he said himself, I just saw when he got interviewed with Andre Ward, is, I can retire right now at this moment, and I have a Hall of Fame resume. I don't have anything to worry about, so that's up to him. If he wants to fight a bunch of nobodies or just get this money and just ride off into the sunset and enjoy his money, or continue to build his legacy and get these victories over PBC fighters, top welterweights. That be Errol Spence, Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, or maybe a super fight with Manny Pacquiao. Who knows? Even though Jinky, at the end of the day, Jinky said, "Nah, you're not fighting Manny Pacquiao. You're not fighting Terrence Crawford." The fight still might happen. He might turn around and say, "Hey, just give me this last opportunity, honey. I'm going to beat Terrence Crawford and retire and be named amongst the very, very best in boxing ever." So, I don't know. It's just Terrence Crawford. He signed the deal. There is no turning back. I'm very disappointed. It was written. He should have seen, smart fighters with smart management say, okay, this is what we have for you. We got these people in the stable. Okay, we can make these fights. We can make this money happen. But, no, it didn't happen. So he has to live with what the decisions were made between him and his team.
Great points. All right, gentlemen, we have just a tad bit left of time. Episode 44 has been officially concluded. Will, thank you so much for jumping on air with us as always. And for those who are listening, don't forget to subscribe to us. Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher. Don't forget to follow us also on IG, the Standing 8 Podcast. Big thanks to Tommy, Aaron, Courtney, and Will Montero once again from Sidestep Boxing. And we'll talk to you guys soon. And don't forget to tune into the fights this weekend. Peace.